Hi, there's tons of videos on YouTube that talk about compression, and they claim to tell you what a compressor is and what it does, and they will say every kind of thing you can imagine. But I'm sure most of the people who talk about it have never ever tried to look after the fact of what a compressor really does with your signal. And this is not a rage against them. This is just something I experienced when I was trying to learn about compression, and when I was trying to build my first compressors back in the days. And yeah, but I've managed to build one that I think is okay. And today we are going to build a very basic compressor, but it's not bad at all. So it will work fine and will do the job. And it will be on stock compressor level in many cases. But anyways, let's take a look at it and let's build it. So we are going to need two inputs. One is going to be I1, the second one is going to be I2. And we are simply adding the two signals together, so we will work in mono. And since this is added together, if the signal is mono, we divide by 2 or multiply by 0.5, so we do not get the level too high. And the next thing we will need is a scope, so we can see what we are doing. And also creating a gain in here. And I'm going to plug these guys in the two inputs like this. And for the time being, I plug in the scope into the M plug so it gets activated. And I want to mark the level of the value 1, which corresponds to 0 dB, but on a linear scale 0 dB is 1. So I raise this up to the maximum, and that's exactly 1. You will see that if I create a 1 constant there, then we can see it. And let me move the scale out a bit, 2 steps like that. And this way we know where 1 is, we know where 0 is, and we can take a deeper look at things that can happen. And the first thing we wanna do is to see our signal, which currently looks like this. I've prepared a breakbeat. It's a stock Ableton Live sample. I hope it won't disturb you too much, so I set the volume down here a bit. So it's this breakbeat, and let me put this into frequency mode. And so yeah, this is a breakbeat. And the first thing we want to do when we use a compressor is to get an idea of what the signal level could be. And for these, envelope followers are pretty nice. They can smooth out the signal pretty nicely. So first I take the absolute value of the signal, and then I put an envelope follower here. And if I plug this in, we have some release. And since we have release, we can also create an attack, but that needs another envelope follower, but this can be an attack. And this is already something that looks like some gain management thing. So the idea here is that we have a clue of what the signal level is, but we want to set a threshold. And the threshold is really going to go, we will try to transform these things so that we won't move the threshold. The threshold is always going to be 1 in reality, but we are going to scale the signal so that that it will be like that we move the threshold. So we don't move the threshold, we move the signal, and then we will transform it accordingly. So to make this a bit more clear, I take the absolute value again. It's not necessary, but this way we can be sure that we are above 0, and I simply divide this by a number between 0 and 1. And this way, if we divide by 0, that goes to infinity, then we scale up the signal to the space, and by 1 we do nothing. So, and now you will understand what I mean, that we scale the signal and the threshold will stay at 1. Let me gate this, because I wanna freeze the scope sometimes. But no, there's the freeze button, okay. So, what we wanna do is that these values here are above the threshold. These are below it. So we wanna clamp the signal to 1, and we want to move these guys, mirror these guys to the 1 axis. And that's pretty simple to do, because that way we have the gain reduction. So if we scale these inverted between the 0 and the 1 value, then we have the gain reduction we are looking for. So first we clamp to 1. So if this is if the signal is smaller than 1, then we output 1, as we output the signal which is higher than 1. And let's take a look at what this looks like. So as you can see, this is something like a gain reduction, but it goes to the wrong way, and we cannot scale it yet. But that can be solved by introducing the power. So why the power? If we take the power of any power of 1, that will output 1, because the square of 1 is 1, the cube of 1, so whatever you, how many times you multiply 1 with 1, it stays 1. And the rest will scale. So if we put any number higher than I think 0 here, or maybe we can go to 16, it will scale. And this is something nice. All we have to do is to turn this whole thing around. So we wanna have 1 at 1, but all the rest we wanna map somehow into this little region, so we have a real gain reduction. And that's pretty simple to do, because we simply have to take the reciprocal of the whole thing. So we divide 1 by this value, and this is the ratio, and this is the threshold here, and this way this looks familiar, no? This looks like gain reduction, so let's apply this to the signal. And for that I'm going to use now gain in, and like this there, like this guys there, and remove the volume and set this to wall modulation, and this really is it. So okay, this is basic compressor, but these values like threshold between 0 and 1 and ratio like this is a bit strange, I think. This is currently a linear compressor, so it works in the linear scale, and it's not too user-friendly, at least not for most of the musicians, but this is usable, it's not sounding bad at all. But we have to move into the logarithmic range, so here we convert from linear to decibels, and in the end, before we apply the gain deduction, we go back to linear from the decibel from the logarithmic scale, and we are going to move this there as well. And all we have to do is to solve these guys in a way that it makes sense, and it's going to be fairly easy to convert this patch to work in the logarithmic scale, because all we did now was to take a step higher in the mathematical order. So what is division in the linear scale? That's subtraction in the logarithmic scale. So if we had a multiplication in the linear scale, that's going to be addition in the logarithmic scale. If we had a power in the linear scale, that's going to be multiplication. So it's going to be fairly easy, and this way we can do something nice, like if this threshold needs to do something, then it has to be subtraction. So this is one thing we know for sure, that we are going to subtract the threshold, and we are going to go like -90 and like this. Probably should work. So if this is smaller than 1, we learned before that 1 on the linear scale is 0 dB. So we just check for 0. And if we are below 0, we are nice, we are fine. If it's below 0, we have to clip it and only care about stuff that's above it. So ratio. There's power here, so we need to multiply by the ratio. Okay, here we will have to do a bit of math, but that's going to be fairly simple, and I won't go in depth with that. And here we have to subtract again, not from 1, we will have to subtract from 0, so simply do like this. Like this, and the conversion is already done, except that the ratio needs a bit of work, so we get the values that we are used to. So here we are going to go from 1 to 64, let's say, and take the reciprocal of this, and subtract it from 1. That's inversion. And that's it. This is now a proper compressor, and I think it's fairly simple, and it should work like. That's it. One thing I don't like here is this if. If you are doing DSP, or any kind of sound related programming, but we don't program here, so it should be nice that it should not be a problem at all that this is here. But it's always nice to avoid if statements. Sometimes you can do it, sometimes you can, and if you can, then do it. And clipping below 0 is fairly easy with using an absolute function. And if you think of it, if you add the absolute value to a number, then if the value was negative and you add the absolute value of it to it, then a negative value gets added to its positive value, so it should be 0. So that's okay. If you add the positive value to the absolute value, that's going to be twice as much as it was before. So we basically clipped below 0, and above it everything is twice as much as it was before. So after this we only have to take the half of the value. So this way we are pretty nice. Like this. And we have no if, and it's a cleaner looking patch. Even if it has a bit more of melt thing in it, I think it's nice and it sounds the same. So that's it. That's a compressor. A compressor takes the original signal and translates it in a way that above the threshold, so it doesn't translate. It takes the original signal, tries to follow it in some way, tries to find out the gain of the signal, and if it has this approximation of the gain, it simply transforms it in a way that above a value it reflects back from the 0 dB point and suppresses the volume. So it's really just volume automation. When your signal gets above a level, it will reflect the gain, basically. It doesn't get really explained in a right way because it's hard to explain. It's so much abstractions in it, and I think it's more useful to see how it works and how these pretty small things add up than trying to explain that it reduces dynamics and there's no such thing as dynamics in DSP, because you know the difference between two values, you know what the previous value of the signal was, and you know what it is currently, and you can guess things, and you have information about stuff, but basically you are, most of the times you have some linear function that does the job, and because in this world we try to avoid non-linearities, or if we use non-linear functions, then they have a reason, and it's mostly analog emulation. Yeah, this is a feed-forward compressor, by the way, and it can be turned into a feedback compressor as well, and for that you need to use the output here, and I did not prepare that diagram, but I found it somewhere earlier, that you can simply mix the output to the current input. Like, here we have the output. I can plug it back here. I just make the output mono as well, just like the input. And then I can add these guys together and multiply them by 0.5. So it's really the average. And basically these would be almost fine, but we have a feedback here, and feedbacks mean that we have to care about it, because these two guys won't match, they won't process the same thing, so we put a previous node right here, so we play this one sample, and this should be okay feedback compressor. Let me play this. And this is not a clean feedback compressor, but this is also a valid method. I think most digital feedback compressors work this way, because it's strange to work on based on the previous signal, and this way it's I think it's better. Or that's my experience. Let me play this. Okay, that's it. We have seen compression, feed-forward, feedback, and now we know what it is, I hope. And if you like this channel, subscribe, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, comment, leave a comment now, and yeah, have fun with Alpha Forever and everything else, and make some good music. Don't care about the technical stuff, or except if you have fun caring about the technical stuff. Yeah. Bye bye.